The Great Depression. Oh, there's a lot of videos about the Great Depression. It's not this depression, it's the Great Depression. And a lot of people focus on how horrible the Great Depression was. I didn't grow up in the Great Depression. I grew up right after the Great Depression. So I didn't know anything about it to make any comment personally about me and the Great Depression. But my father was an adult throughout the Great Depression. From beginning to end, he experienced the Great Depression. And people used to hang out in my father's radio shop and later TV and radio shop. They used to hang out there. They'd gamble sometimes, but they just hang around and talk. So I had my father who experienced the Great Depression, and I had all these people around me who also were about my father's age, who had lived through the Great Depression. And looking back on it, I can say this. To those people like my father and his friends, the Great Depression wasn't so great. It was never discussed. It's not like it was so horrible they couldn't talk about it like the Holocaust. It just didn't cross their mind to talk about that period of 10 years called the Great Depression. To them, it wasn't great. There's nothing great about it, nothing particular bad about it. It just kind of happened, and they lived through it. So today, we think of the Great Depression as great, horrible, great. We must focus on the horribleness of the Great Depression. But the people who actually lived through it had nothing to say about it. They just, whatever it took to live through the Great Depression, they did it. They just moved along through life and let the Great Depression pass them by. These were not wealthy people who avoided the Great Depression. No, these were working class people, adults, who lived the entire time in the Great Depression, and it didn't have a big impression. That's what I can tell you right now. It did not have a big impression. The Great Depression did not have a big impression on the people who lived through it.